Hi, so it's been a little while since I made a video. This is partly space issues and also, I guess I took a little break. I want to sort of edit and review my channel fairly soon, just to tidy it up a bit. But anyway, I want to talk about a subject that I've raised before, but I've come across a piece in the newspaper which I think reiterates the problem. And the piece is by Ian Burrell in his opinion piece, Media on Monday. This is from the 14th of December. It's about Russia Today. So I'll show you the cover. This is the report by Ian Burrow. I should say it's not the cover of the paper, it's in the back pages, but it makes for some sobering reading. After 15 years, Russia's global news network has become only more brazen. I agree with a lot of his analysis here, and I think it is very concerning. Rather than just read out what he's written, will offer a few of my own thoughts. Firstly, it's important to understand how RT works. If you don't know, RT is used to be Russia Today. That is still the acronym, but it started off as a relatively small um, Russian network, and it's now grown to have quite a sizable presence in Western countries, in particularly in the UK and the United States, and it has offices in both countries. It was founded in the mid 2000s, and it's long been known for taking a very Russian nationalistic angle with things. Um, Over the years, as I've sort of looked at it more, I've grown more and more contempt for what RT does. I think it's a disgrace to journalism. I think it's nothing but a mouthpiece of the Kremlin. Um, and whilst I am very critical from that angle, what I find more concerning than what it is doing itself, because Putin's a hawkish leader. Putin wants to rebuild the old Soviet Empire. That was always his agenda. Um, and his record speaks for itself. I think Vladimir Putin will go down as one of the great tyrants of the 21st century. But his record speaks for itself, so it really isn't surprising that a network with such close ties to his regime has the angle it has. That's not surprising. What is more alarming to me is the number of Westerners that are taken in by it. Now, on television, RT has a pretty small presence. Most Britons probably don't even have access to it. They don't have that Sky extension, or if they do, they won't spend much time on it. So its actual television audience in the UK is probably very small. We're probably talking a few thousand people, that would be a guess. Where RT garners support is more online. It's online clickbait videos and definitely in the promotion of conspiracy theories. By the way, when I say conspiracy theories, I'm not saying there's nothing in them, but there is an agenda with conspiracy theories, unquestionably. You have to look very, very, very critically at the way RT report things. Now, if you look at RT videos, tends to be preaching to the masses in the sense that a lot of the people who support RT tend to flock to it because they're disillusioned with, as they see it, Western mainstream media. But my retort to that would be, is RT some sort of small independent network that's just a voice of reason amidst the media establishment? No, it's not. Part of the Russian state. That's what's so infuriating about the lies that RT comes out with, because they say, they get very arrogant, very sarcastic in their retorts to the criticism. They will say the BBC and CNN or MI5 and the CIA call us propaganda. We say we're telling the truth or questioning more is their little tagline. Um, Even have a program called Watching the Hawks. The irony of this is astonishing. I mean, RT's arrogance is matched only by its hypocrisy, because they have, like I say, segments like Watching the Hawks. Never say anything about Russian militarism. They never say anything about the fact that Russia has propped up the Assad regime and killed thousands of Syrians. They never say anything about, well, they do say a lot actually. I'll rephrase that. They say a lot just from an extremely pro-Russian angle. What I find most galling about RT is their dishonesty. The fact that they pretend to just be questioning more when really all they are is a mouthpiece of the Kremlin. Now, say what you want about the BBC or CNN. I can think of lots of criticism of the BBC, but you cannot rationally say that the BBC is a mouthpiece of the British government in the way that RT is a mouthpiece of the Russian government. RT never, ever, ever criticizes Putin. A few years ago, Ofcom gave them a £200,000 fine due to their coverage of the Ukraine conflict and of the Salisbury attacks. I think it was of the Ukraine conflict. Um, yeah. Um, but fines are meaningless to the likes of RT. It could just get that money from the Russian state. Um, but there's Western journalists working on RT, including a journalist from my city. And I have to be honest, when I hear British accents on RT, I feel sick. I feel these people are stabbing their country in the back. I don't like to use the word traitor, but if we are in a new Cold War, they've laid the bed, put it that way. They know who they're sleeping with. And in my opinion, they are stabbing their country in the back. Now, RT's spokeswoman, the editor in chief, I should say, Margarita Simonian, is typically arrogant, defensive. When Ofcom issued that fine, did they say, okay, we will respect the findings or we will try to be more impartial? No, they laughed. RT's response to the Salisbury attack was to mock the situation. Bear in mind, this was a situation where not only two Russian nationals have been poisoned, but two Britons ended up dying as a result of the radiation. The police officer involved hasn't been able to go back to work, even though he's a young guy. He was basically forced into early retirement, and he's still suffering the effects of it 2 years on. So this has real world effects. We see an ever more confident and brazen Russia. Russian warships are getting increasingly complacent, patrolling British waters, getting close to British waters. Um, and I just think that we need to really wake up and do a lot more. I am furious with Ofcom. I've said this before. I think Ofcom has shown weakness. They issued the fine. RT hasn't changed. That should have been reason enough for them to say, okay, now we're going to strip the license. They failed to do that. Why? Why? I'm furious with Ofcom. I think that their weakness in the face of little adversity is just unforgivable because the extent of RT's disinformation, the extent of it promoting conspiracy theories as news. I mean, what a typical RT tactic will be, they will get some disgruntled CIA employee or former politician in the UK. They'll invite them on the show as experts, right? And those people are just, they're disgruntled ex-employees. They just have a bone to pick with their um, their respective organizations, and so they go to RT because RT will do that for them. People who get into all sorts of conspiracy theories flock to RT because it tells them what they want to hear. Um, they even had I didn't know this actually because I try to avoid watching it as much. I have access to RT, so I can see it. But in Green Menace, the English language channel mocks the West's handling of the pandemic and its irrational fear of Russia, irrational in their eyes. Um, I mean, that's typical of RT, mocking the West's handling of the pandemic. This is something in which, in this country, well over 60,000 people have died. RT thinks that's something to mock. I think there's a callous streak to RT, certainly an arrogant streak, and unquestionably, an ideological Russian ultranationalist agenda. I mean, this is a network that was set up by Russian ultranationalists. There were a few examples. I forget her name now, but one of the American um, anchor women that was on RT famously resigned on air because she said she was no longer going to promote their propaganda. I think it happened twice, in fact. Um, RT is going to do what it's going to do, but what's unforgivable is how we just let them get away with it. Free speech, when it's used against us, when it's used to undermine our security, is no longer an issue about liberty. It's an issue of national security. Um, and when you consider Russia's track record on press freedom, when you consider the number of journalists murdered in Russia, RT really is in no position to whine about freedom of speech. I think it's toxic. I hate it. And I would dearly love to see it shut down. Of course, they would still have an online presence. That's harder to regulate. But I don't think they deserve a platform here. They would play the victim. They would say, "Oh, look at the British boasting of free speech, but they want to silence us." Frankly, I think we need to be a lot more vocal. I think Ofcom is weak. I have I've no respect for Ofcom anymore because I think they're just weak, and that's unforgivable in this current situation. But I would like to see the government maybe calling this out. We have to see this as more than. I mean, I suppose that's a double-edged sword because that would give them attention, which is exactly what they want. I mean, it's the nature of any network. They want attention. They want to make their name. But RT already has a toxic influence online in terms of its disinformation, in terms of its agenda. I definitely would take a harder line, though. I would say responsible political parties should suspend MPs who appear on this show. I really don't think that is an overstatement. Why not? Why the hell not? I mean, even if they think they're going to be speaking freely, they are going to be used as tools. This has happened time and time and time again. So I've directly challenged, incidentally, MPs who have. One of the former Liberal Democrats, I think it was Mark Oaten, don't quote me on that, I believe it was Mark Oaten. He claimed that he's critical of Putin and he was going to speak his own mind. But the way I see it, if you appear on RT, you're legitimizing them. This, in my opinion, is not a legitimate network. They're not interested in reporting the news. They're interested in pushing Russian foreign policy. They're interested in vilifying the West. Look at every single report they have on Britain or France or the United States. They always home in on the divisions. They love it. Now, there will be people in the West who say, well, because of our own issues, with, for example, how freedom of speech is handled in universities and so on, then they will gravitate to the likes of RT. That's why I think it's so critical that we do keep an eye on our own situation and why we do need to cherish free speech. But when it's, these people who are going to RT because they think that RT cares about, um, well, anything really, I think they are misguided. I understand the frustration at the likes of the BBC for not covering certain issues. As an example, the grooming gang situation has been woefully underreported in this country. So RT, of course, sucked it up. But RT doesn't give a damn about the young girls who were victims of this. RT just wants to score points against the West. It's the only reason they're doing it. People need to understand what this network is all about. I think it's poison. Um, I mean, Margarita Simonia may as well be a KGB agent. You know, um, she is a stooge of Vladimir Putin, and so is her vile network in the sense of being a platform for Putin. I mean, you'll notice RT never criticizes Putin. That to me should be pretty damn obvious what they're about. And I know there's psychology here. People might think, well, I'm giving it more attention by making this video. But, they're just getting more brazen and more arrogant. So as long as that's the case, as long as they are out there, there needs to be dissenting voices. Those people who say that RT is just another voice versus the BBC or CNN, they're totally missing the point. You can be critical of the BBC or CNN whilst not be a useful idiot and endorse the lies and propaganda of RT. And it saddens and frustrates me. So many Westerners, they go to you just see the little comment threads. It's full of sheep, people who can't think for themselves, yet they think they're so open-minded and so, oh, look how radical I'm being because I'm, questioning the establishment. But they're just being used. by the likes of Margarita Simonian. She knows what she's doing. Um, I personally would actually love to see something like RT suffer a massive hacking cyber attack or something like that. I'd like to get them, see them get a bit of their own medicine. I would like to see them, frankly, pay for their agenda against the West. I love my country, and I believe RT is a threat to this country. I believe RT undermines Western democracy. I really do. How? By promoting Russian foreign policy on our shores, by deliberately throwing flames on divisions, by promoting baseless conspiracy theories as news. It's toxic. It's absolutely toxic. And I know there will be some people who don't think critically and they just believe everything RT tells them who will attack me and they'll call me a hawk. Well, you know what? If being anti Putin and also, incidentally, anti Beijing makes me a hawk, then so be it. I'm proud to be a hawk against those regimes. And I really don't care what anyone thinks of that. I do think that when history is recorded, it will look back at this time as, we just showed weakness too much. May expelled Russian diplomats after Salisbury, which was one of her, in my opinion, stronger moments as premier. But as a nation, I think we're still far, far, far too passive when it comes to the Russian and Chinese threats. Far too passive.